Hi everyone, my name's Dillon and I'm Head of Equity at Swoop Funding. And my focus is to help find funding for startups and SMEs. Hopefully I can shed some light on alternative types of funding options available to you to fund your business. To start, you probably all know that the market is pretty fragmented and it can be hard to know what is actually out there in the first place. That's why Swoop Funding was created. To try and make it easy to access different forms of funding from equity, debt, grants, and savings. Hopefully, I can teach you a bit about that today. So we're going to start with this slide here. We're going to go around from the equity side on the left to loans on the top, and then to grants. And then after that, we'll talk a bit about savings. So we'll start with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a way for recreational or smaller investors to invest in your business. The two main operators in the UK are Seedrs and Crowdcube. This sort of investment, it's really good for B2C businesses or business to consumer businesses. The reason for that is because a lot of these recreational investors are going to be your customers, and it's hard to get those types of people, those types of investors, really excited about a B2B style business. It doesn't mean it can't happen, but it is easier for a business to consumer business. It's also important to note that you won't be able to go onto one of these platforms just by signing up. They will have to vet you first, and then often they will ask you to have at least 50% of the investment committed. So if you want to raise 200,000, you'll have to have at least 100,000 before they'll put you live on their platform. The reason for this is because they want to create the feeling of like the fear of missing out feeling and have a social proof type feeling for that. When someone sees your business on their site, it shows, okay, this person is 50% funded or 70% funded. So the person looking at it says, oh, well, I better invest in this quickly or I'll miss out on a good investment. It never looks good to have a business that's sitting there with 0 or 10% funded. Not that many people will be that too interested. So that's always something to bear in mind. You need to have either a cornerstone investment before you can go live on that. Something that happens really often with crowdfunding is you might be looking for 400,000, but you'll say that you're looking for 200,000, and when it goes live, you'll have your commitment of 100,000, and you'll overfund, and you'll get up to 300,000, or you'll get up to your 400,000 that you were looking for, and then you can say, oh, I overfunded on Seedrs or Crowdcube, and it looks really good for your business, that it was so popular that you had to allow people to overfund your business. So that always looks good. Like I mentioned, you're really trying to sell the dream or sell your product to the investors because they're probably going to be your customers or people like them. So what you need to do that is really strong marketing materials. Often when you go to a venture capitalist, you might just need a really good pitch deck, but for crowdfunding, you'll need a really nice video, maybe several videos, a short teaser video and one that explains the product more and shows it in a really good light. That's really important to hopefully get the funding that you need. But I've covered crowdfunding. Hopefully you've seen it before, but go on and check out these platforms. It's really interesting. It is a really good way to get funding, and sometimes it can be hard to convince a big investor to invest in your business because they just don't know it as well as your customers do. And if you can convince, there's nothing more compelling than your customers being the ones that invest in your business. So, and it's really good to get the word out about your company. Next, we'll talk about SEIS and EIS. So for those of you who don't know, SEIS stands for Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. And this is a scheme which allows investors to invest in your business for up to 150K under the scheme. And it means that they can get a tax benefit here. So they can write off 50% of their investment against their tax bill for the year. they also pay no capital gains tax on the profits and no inheritance tax. So this makes your business, if you've gone, you can do it with an accountant or see legals do it. You can go and get advanced assurance for SEIS. And that's telling an investor that you are eligible for SEIS. So that means an investor can avail of the tax scheme if they invest in your company. That makes you immediately more attractive, because startup investing is inherently risky. But if you can de-risk it a little bit by being eligible for this tax scheme, that is absolutely fantastic. So there are lots of investors and also venture capital funds that have been set up purely to invest under this scheme because it's such a great scheme. Another scheme is EIS, the Enterprise Investment Scheme. This is SEIS's bigger brother. And also just want to note for SEIS, it applies to businesses that are no more than 2 years older than from the date of their first commercial sale. So it's really important to note, once you make your commercial sale, you have 2 years to avail of the SEIS scheme. And so back to the EIS scheme, the Enterprise Investment Scheme. This is for businesses that are 7 years or younger from their first commercial sale. And you can raise up to 12 million in the lifetime of a business and 3 million in any given year. So it's a lot more than the 150,000 that you can do under SEIS. The only difference here for the investor is the investors can write off 30% again of the investment against their tax bill for the year instead of 50%, but the rest is still the same. So what I would advise is, if you're a young business and you're looking for investment, go and make sure that you have advanced assurance for SEIS or EIS, depending on how much you're going to raise. So that's really important. So many new investment funds have emerged because of these two schemes. Next, I'm going to talk about family offices. Just briefly, you may have heard of them, you may not have, but they are becoming a major part of investors in companies. They tend to like things like retail and food and beverage, a bit more of the old school type of investment. And one of the advantages of family office investment is they'll often have lots of retail estates in their portfolio. So if you're a consumer product and you need a shop window, often a family office would be a great investor for you because they might be able to give good rates for properties to use for your shops. They can be really difficult to reach because, you know, when you think of a family offices, they don't really have a brand name, and they'll often just have a few advisors or a few fund managers who will be looking at deals for them. But it can be tough to know who to contact. Within Swoop, we actually do know quite a few family offices, so we're able to go directly to them. But some of the other ways, the organic ways of doing it, would be publicity in newspapers. Often if a good article is written about you, or you're putting yourself out there in newspapers or on social media, something like that, you might get picked up by a family office and actually get contacted by them. You know, it's just one anecdotal way I've heard of people getting reached out to by family offices. But yeah, Swoop has a network of them. Next, I'll just talk about venture capital in general. All of these are, or what I've mentioned, like SEIS and EIS, they actually could be classed as venture capital as well. But venture capital in general, it's institutional investors who will have, a fund manager will have set up a fund of several million, and they'll make anywhere between 5 to 20 investments in a year. And what happens is you send your pitch deck, they'll look at a lot of deal flow in that year, and they'll meet a few founders, and then they do a long process of due diligence before they would invest in the company. Often venture capitalists, they may just be money and they may just be the investment. Other times they'll be more hands-on and they'll want a say in how the business is run. Sometimes they might put a junior member of their team on your board, or even a senior member of their team on your board and be an advisor to you. So that really just depends on the venture capital firm. One thing to note, that I think venture capital gets a lot of airtime because it's, when you talk about the big unicorns and tech companies, they're the ones who've invested in them a lot of the time. So when you're talking about your Ubers and your Robin Hoods and things like that, they'll have investment from a lot of the big venture capital firms. But it is important to note that less than 1% of investments come from venture capital for startups. So often it's friends and family that have invested, or it's organic growth, or it's angel investors, and it's not venture capital at all. So they probably get a disproportionate amount of airtime because of the nature of their business, and they look for unicorns. So it's just important to note that venture capital isn't the be all and end all. Within venture capital, I just want to mention that there are regional funds. So in the UK, it's very competitive to raise capital, and regional funds they make it they reduce the competition by region. If you can find a regional fund that will invest in you, you're not competing with the rest of the UK. You're actually just investing or competing with that region. So an example would be the MEIF, which is the Midlands Angel Investment Fund. If you're from the Midlands, you should check it out. If you've got some operations there, you should check it out. You should go on to the British Business Bank. They've got a few funds for different reasons. The Northern Powerhouse Development Fund, you should check that out. The Welsh Development Agency, Cornwall Fund, the Scotland Enterprise. Most regions will have dedicated funds that will help out founders from that region, or founders that have, or businesses that have operations in that region. So it's worth checking out. And it's not all just the other regions, but London. Some of you are probably from London. London also has its benefits, like the Angel Co-Fund in London, which will match investment if they get investment. If the founder can find investment from another angel, the Angel Co-Fund will match the amount that the other angel has put in under certain circumstances, but it's worth checking with them. And then there's a London Co-Fund, which is a tech fund that will match investment from an angel in your business. So those are two really good things to check out in London. And you may have set up in London, but you may decide that you could have some operations in Cornwall for some reason. And that could be a huge benefit for you, because you can avail of both the benefits of being in London and the benefits of being in Cornwall. Swoop funding itself, we've got a base in London and Dublin, and that meant that we've been able to benefit from the schemes and funds in both those regions. So that's just one to bear in mind. And then lastly, on the equity side, it's high net worths and angel investors. So it can be hard to find angel investors and high net worth individuals, but these are in some ways the lifeblood of the ecosystem, because these are people who've either had a successful career themselves, or they know a specific industry, or they've just made some good investments early on, and they've gone on to invest in more companies and more startups. So it's really good to if you know any of them, and if you might have went to school with some people who are high net worth individuals now, and maybe they invest, but it can be really hard to get in contact with these people. Swoop helps with that. So if you've signed up to our platform, you can hopefully we'll put you in contact with the right angels, and we've got connections with angel syndicates. Angel syndicates are generally a big group, could be 20 to 100 different angel investors, and they've grouped together, and they'll often have a fund manager who will manage the day-to-day running and bring them deal flow. And then they'll have pitch events, and the angels will come to the pitch events, and then they'll decide whether they're interested in investing in that business. And often the fund manager will charge a little fee to the angels for that service. One thing I would advise you to do within your area, you should look up angel event evenings. So often they might just have an open evening, or you could apply to be part of their pitch events. So check that out in your local area. Also, go out, and you could use LinkedIn for one. It's very hard. It can be hard, but LinkedIn is a really powerful tool. And if you're in a specific niche area, then it can be great way to approach people, because you can look up that industry, you can look up the area that you work in and say, hey, got this cool idea. And while you're not going to ask for funds directly on LinkedIn, I wouldn't advise that. You might actually reach out to them for a coffee and get some advice on your business from them. Lots of people with lockdown are sitting at home still. So, you might get 15 minutes of their time. And if it's not lockdown, go ask them for a coffee, and hopefully they might be interested in your business, and then you can go from there. So that is the equity side of things.